What is up, everybody? Welcome back to Broadened Horizon. I'm your host, Drake Riggs, bringing you episode 7, the first of 2021. Did you miss us? Well, have no fear, we are here. Thank you so much, as always, for watching or listening, you guys. This episode's lineup consists of 5 guests this time. All sorts of history being made. Can you believe it? Here we are, doing our thing. First, we have one of Japan's best flyweights who is fresh off of her 20th career win at Deep 100 Impact, Shizuka Sugiyama. After Shizuka, the rising young bantamweight prospect Takumi Tamaru joined us ahead of his RIZIN debut at RIZIN 27 on March 21st. Then we welcomed back our first two-time guest of the show, and what better person could we have asked for? None other than the atomweight goat herself, the champ, Ayaka Hamasaki. She, as well as the rest of the final 2 guests, are also back in action at RIZIN 27. Following Ayaka is UFC and 1 veteran Kazuki Tokudome, who squares off with Roberto Satoshi de Souza. And last but not least is another former UFC competitor, Yoshinori Horie, who goes against Tetsuya Seki. Thank you to all of them for joining and to those who submitted questions, and a very special thank you to Mr. Dave Fretz himself, who helped put together a fantastic surprise piece of artistry, you could say, which you will see in one of the chats later on. But no spoilers, you guys. You just have to watch and see yourself. And wherever you are watching or listening, all versions of Broadened Horizon can be found on mymmanews.com, those versions being video, audio, and Japanese audio. All right, enough intro. Thank you again. Let's get the show rolling. First up is Shizuka Sugiyama. So I wanted to wish you a late happy birthday, by the way. I know it was your birthday this month. So did you do anything special for the birthday?
Yeah, thank you very much. I couldn't eat any food or any cakes, so just normal day. I spent just normal day.
Mm-hmm. Right, because the fight was coming up. And speaking of that, congratulations on that win and being a part of, the
Thank
big
you very much.
20th anniversary show for, Deep and Deep 100
Yeah.
Impact. How was that being a part of something, a really big deal, a 20-year anniversary for the show? Was that an honor for you?
Yes, I was very honored to be there. Um, Kitaoka-san, you know, Kitaoka-san, Shoji-san, many legends were there. So Saiki-san said to me, are you fighting on that event? I was, yeah, I can. So I was very surprised that offer. And yeah, I was happy to be there.
Yeah, and you were the only female fight as well, so did that make it a little bit more special too?
Yes, I didn't know that, but my debut was jaws, kind of deep jaws. So my life, my MMA life is all my MMA life is on deep. So the anniversary, I if I could celebrate. That was big opportunity.
Yeah, and then you went out there and got the win, very impressive first round, ground and pound, really, some vicious stuff there. How, was that how you imagined the fight would go? It was pretty quick.
Yeah, I imagine that.
Shizuka, I was curious about like your start in MMA too, how you got into it, because I know you have your karate background, right? The black belts. Just how did you start, to get into MMA, and how young were you?
I was a student uh physical education university.
Hmm.
And my friends around me were Olympians. Not all, but many friends train for Olympics, and I watched them. I need to do something like their. I felt they're emotional,
Mm-hmm.
so I decided to be something champion. And then I met karate club, karate dojo.
Mm-hmm.
Just that. And then I was big. I was over 60 kilos, and karate is not so, there's no so many the
Divisions?
weight class
Yeah.
divisions.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So on over 60 kilos, I competed. Yes, Kai.
Hey, what's up, man? Good to see you.
Sakura.
How are you?
Thank you.
Hey, man. Good to see you again.
Sorry.
How about that? That's funny. He was the first guest on my show.
Yeah. The older brother there too.
Okay, nice.
Okay,
Cool.
sorry. That's my start MMA.
Very cool. Very cool. And in terms of
Okay.
any inspirations that you might have had growing up or, when you first got into MMA, is there anybody you looked at that kind of inspired you?
Minowa-man ですね。
It's a very good one. Plenty of history that he has been a part of. And, to look at kind of, you mentioned already how deep a big part of your career, Jules, and fighting, when they were Jules before being deep Jules, just the importance of, that promotion, not only to you, but to MMA. How important would you say that the deep Jules has been in MMA?
最初、寝技
So when women's MMA was happening in Japan, it was a lot of a ground game, and Deep Jules kind of set the bar with standard MMA, and it kind of reintroduced what's going on internationally. For me, I've always felt that Japanese women's MMA, our industry, we were the ones who kind of started focused on Japanese women's fighting, women's MMA, and we feel like we've been doing this. We were the ones who were putting in all the time doing this. But as time passes, I was very it was kind of disappointing to see that the level of competition and the whole concept of women's MMA has kind of been taken over by the West. And that's when Deep Jules came in, and they set the bar with at the international level for women's MMA. So I think I was there. I've seen it all happen. So for me, I think in that sense, Deep Jules definitely has an important part of our industry right now.
Yeah, and you mentioned it right there, how you have seen it all and been fighting for over 10 years now. Is that crazy to think about, having been in MMA for that long?
Yeah. こんなに長くやるとは思ってなかったです。
So for me, I didn't think that I would be in this for this long. And in terms of like the memories of my career, but let me speak about let me speak for women's MMA is that we've witnessed Pride, we were there for Dream and now RIZIN, but now to see that women's MMA is such a big part of a big promotion like RIZIN, it's very nice to see the progress and to see where women's MMA is in the biggest stage of Japanese MMA.
Was that kind of a goal that you had, when you started to kind of help, propel women's MMA to where it is now today? Was that something you thought about?
目標は、そういう目標はなかったです。
No, I did not have those ideas in mind.
It's funny, Shizuka, because from watching your career so far to this point, and as it still continues, I feel like you always have been a fighter who really kind of tries to have more fun than being too serious. Is that something that you kind of try to do, or is it just how it comes off?
多分、now,
So right now, my current state of mind is I'm very serious about this. But before, I've always been in this thinking that this will be my last time, so might as well have fun. So that was my mentality. I think that's what you caught.
どうにか楽しもうっていうのがありました。言う通り。
So that's yeah, very interesting how it all gets received, I guess, by the public when we see you going out there and doing your thing. And speaking of kind of having fun and that side of things, I know that you're good friends with Kanako Murata, and you guys do some training every now and then. Just curious, what is it like, working with somebody like Kanako, who a very fun personality as well?
楽しいです。
Yeah, so she's definitely a very fun person to be with. But in terms of practice, I think, starting to work with her, the quality of practice has gotten up, and I think my style has changed based off of her coming to training. And we've been knowing each other for the past probably 3 or 4 years, but it's been nothing but great. We hang out during personal times as well. So she's a very good person to be with.
Absolutely. I can imagine always fun times getting to chat with Kanako when I've been fortunate enough to do so. But as for you, Shizuka, of course, like I said, got that great win at the 20th anniversary show. And I know that, you mentioned, maybe fighting and RIZIN next, something you want to do. Is that what you want to do next? What are you thinking for when your next fight will be?
今のところ、
So for me, I don't really have a specific person I want to face at the moment. So I think as long as I can keep on fighting, I don't really care where I fight. But obviously, RIZIN's a good choice. But Deep they've been approaching me, and they've been kind of hinting about a belt as well. So, and I do appreciate that. And for me, whatever fight I want to continue to fight, I want to fight various people, opponents. So wherever I fight, I'll fight. But meanwhile, all I can do is just train.
トレーニングをするだけですね。
I know it's a little bit difficult right now with how the world is, but do you have hopes of getting, maybe to America at some point and fighting for, whether it's Bellator or the UFC or maybe even Invicta? Is that something that you kind of hope to do in your career?
ないとは言わないですけど、そんなに現実的ではないです。
I would be lying if I said I don't, but I honestly don't see it too realistic for me at the moment.
Have any of those promotions ever contacted you? Because I feel like it's surprising that they haven't wanted you, that you haven't been there yet. I feel like it's something that should have happened by now.
ないですね。
No, they haven't reached out.
Okay. Interesting stuff there. Well, maybe soon, maybe sometime soon, and especially when things get more back to normal, like I said. But also I was reading, internet articles and being translated through Japanese to English might be a little bit off, but I was seeing how they were saying like maybe you had some weight issues or something with this recent fight. Is that nonsense, or are you thinking maybe go up to bantamweight at some point? What's the status there?
いや、別に問題はないんですけど、
So weight cut it's never easy, and it's always tough, but that applies to everybody. So let's just leave it there. But as far as going up to bantamweight, it's that's just too big for me.
大きすぎるかなと思います。
All right. Was just curious about that situation, and the weight classes are always interesting, moving around and whatnot. But also, Shizuka, you're very popular on YouTube. Just to shift gears to that, great channel that you have, the platform there, your YouTube channel doing very well. I'm just curious, how fun has that been, making videos and content online? I know you've been doing it for, what, a year now? How has that been?
そうですね。まあ、できることをやってるだけなんですけど、はい。楽しんでいます。
Yeah, I'm just trying to make what I can, make kind of content what I can, but I do enjoy the process.
For sure, it always looks like some fun stuff that you're putting out. Try to check them out when I can. Also, I know outside of fighting related things, you're also into skateboarding, right? Is that a hobby you've been doing for a while, or is this something new that you've picked up?
オーストラリアにいるときに一生懸命やってたんですけど、今は一週間に一回も触らないです。
I used to practice a lot of skateboarding when I was in Australia, but now these days I probably don't touch it once a week.
What were you in Australia for?
ワーキングホリデーです。
She was out in Australia for with a working holiday visa.
All right, very cool, very cool. What'd you think of that country? I know it's always fun to, go to places that you don't usually go to, right?
柔術を習いました。
So I was there around 2011, I believe. But I do feel that they had a lot of love towards jiu-jitsu, and I was able to practice get some mat time there. It was about the time where the UFC would be coming to Australia. They like the sport, and they're all nice people.
Yes, I've had nothing but good experience with the Australians as well. So I was very curious about that. And I'll just leave you with two last things here, Shizuka. Thank you so much again. Nicknames. I always like to hear the stories about nicknames. And I don't know if you still use this one, but the big newcomer of hope. I'm curious the origin story to this nickname.
それって当初ですよね、当初。わかんないけど。多分、デビューの時につけられたんじゃないですか。
I think the newcomer of hope was named for me in my debut fight. I'm not quite aware of it.
Okay, so another one of those random nickname stories. Kyoji had one of these where he didn't know he had nicknames. So it's funny. I always have to get to the bottom of it. So there we go. All right, we'll leave you with this, Shizuka. 2021, it is here now. We're moving along, getting ready for March. It's March for you guys now. Just curious, what are your goals for this year? By the time that it's 2022, what will you have wanted to achieve in this year by the time we get to the next one?
今年は、まあ、RIZIN の
So my goal this year is to get a win in RIZIN. And if Deep is going to make a title in their division, I would like to go after that. So pretty much, winning all my fights will be my goal this year.
Absolutely. Always a good goal to have. But all right, we'll leave it with that, Shizuka. This has been great. Thanks so much for the time. Big arigato gozaimashita, even though I know you know your thank yous. But yeah, this was awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate it greatly. And, wishing you all the best in the rest of the year. I will be tuning in to whatever your next fight is and the one after that and after that. So just thank you so much again. And, take care.
ありがとうございます。Thank you. See you.
Yep. From there, we go to Takumi Tamaru. All right. Well, thanks so much for joining me today, Takumi. Good to see you, man. Hope you're doing well. Means a lot that you would come on the show. Appreciate it. Excited for the big debut, man, on RIZIN. What was your reaction? Getting the call to fight for RIZIN. I'm sure that, very exciting moment for you.
そうですね。すごく嬉しくて。
I was simply very excited to get the call. And for me, I'm actually very excited to see how my MMA style, how my MMA is going to work in the biggest stage in Japan, and how it's going to be received by the audience and the exposure it gives me.
Definitely. And we're all looking forward to seeing it, man. Was this kind of something you imagined, earlier on in your career ahead of this moment, like something you were visualizing and hoping, to get to do at some point, fighting for RIZIN?
そうですね。本当始めた時
So when I
は
started
なくて
in MMA,
僕としては
RIZIN
出たかったんですけど、
there was no RIZIN. So obviously my goal was to,
まあ
get to the UFC and aim for the
UFC への道も
UFC.
どんどん
That was my
立たれてい
goal when I
って
started. but the doors for Japanese fighters to become a UFC fighter, to get that contract to the UFC, were all shutting down. It was just getting harder and harder for Japanese fighters to make it to the UFC. So as I was in my career, kind of without a goal, without a set goal, that's kind of when RIZIN started to really shine with their bantamweights, with their divisions. So I think at that time, that's when RIZIN really started to shine in my eyes, and I kind of shifted towards wanting to competing in RIZIN.
Do you kind of, feel better or more motivated by having a goal, something to work towards, like UFC, like you said, or RIZIN now that it has appeared, or when you're in that state of not really knowing where things might go, just kind of going with the flow and having less pressure on you? Is there a difference you would say in terms of, looking too far ahead? Is that something, you even think about?
そうですね。まあ、どうなんですかね。
So I have to admit, I don't think I have the strongest mindset and the strongest mentality. But I try to use that as an advantage because I know that I'm not the strongest mindset. I try to push myself to the limit and over the limit by having a goal. So to answer your question, setting a goal definitely helps me get better and proceed.
Definitely. It's always nice to have something to work towards or, see some kind of picture in the distance. But, speaking of those pressures and maybe mental strength and what have you, a lot of people view you as a very highly touted prospect, somebody who's very skilled, obviously, and, has a lot of potential. So when you hear people, if you hear people, saying these things, do you take that in at all or do you try and kind of ignore it?
昔はそういうのすごい嬉しくて、
So before, when I would hear these compliments and receive these compliments and all these hype, I would get excited. I'd be very excited. I'd be happy and grateful, and I would try anything to meet their expectations. That's what I used to do, but trying to meet other people's expectations, it kind of throws you off of your rhythm. And it kind of throws you off on who you are and what you want to do. So recently, I've been trying to stick with my instinct and keep my pace as a fighter in what I do, and try to keep my base, and stick with what I want to do and who I want to be.
Yeah, I mean, you're the person who gets to make it happen. So, drowning out the noise as best as you can always makes some sense. And you managed to have 3 fights last year in a wild 2020, and the wild times we're living in right now. Did it feel different at all preparing for those 3 fights and the new landscape we have to, work with at the moment?
いや、結構練習はきつくて、
Yeah, so training during these times is very hard for me because I live in Gifu, which is totally the countryside. And in my town or in my city, there's only one other professional fighter out besides me. And everybody else would be just kids, women, and amateur fighters. So for me, I couldn't get any quality sparring time or cross training because I usually go out and cross train. I go out to the cities and cross train with other professionals to get prepared for a fight. But with this whole state of emergency and this whole quarantine stuff, it prevented me from going out to the cities and training with other professionals. So the training itself during these times has been really tough.
Yeah, I can imagine. And are you still having to do it kind of that way, or are things a little bit different now as time has gone on and as you prepare for this next fight?
そうですね、3月の
Yeah, the situation is still the same. The state of emergency is still it's under effect until early March. So that means that I can't really go out to the city and cross train until like the second or third week of March. So I'm pretty much on my own here for this fight.
Well, hey, I'm sure you can look at it as a way to, makes you stronger having to get through these kind of situations, and then you can get back to, more normal training situations and be all that much better, right?
そうですね。まあ、
So I think, with the given circumstances, there are still many things that you can work on to make yourself better. And a lot of it is visualizing the situations in your head, in your mind, and building that strong image within your head. So, like, let's say I can roll with a purple belt, but I can still imagine and spar with him that he's a black belt. So I don't look at him as a purple belt. It's all about controlling your mind and being creative. And that's I think that's what leads to productive practice. And without a strong sparring partner, I can still work on a lot of things, especially like heading into this fight. I can think of certain situations where the fight may take me, which is obviously on the ground, and my opponent is really good of taking the back and going for the choke from taking my back. So, I can do a lot of situation training. Maybe I can just give up my back on purpose and, work from there. Maybe I can set that up as bait. Maybe I can work on not giving up my back. There's just so many ways to be creative under the given situation. So, after the pandemic is all good, once it's all cleared, there's definitely certain other trainings that I can do, but still there's a lot of things that I can do under the given situation. So I'm not too worried.
Yeah, I mean, very good analysis there and interesting points overall. And, you mentioned kind of the training partners that, you're lacking at the moment and all. But I know before, the world got crazy, you were doing some training with a very good fighter in Dominic Cruz and going over to San Diego Alliance, the training center over there in San Diego. Just curious, like how long were you training with them when you did make the visit, and what inspired you to kind of go there of all places?
そうですね。まあ、ドミニクル・クルーズ
Yeah,
が
so the reason why I chose to go down to Alliance is because one, Dominic Cruz is totally one of my my favorite fighters, and I'm very much inspired by him. And two, I've been hearing really good things about the owner Eric. He's been a very good person,
いい方
and trying to
だっ
take
て
care
いう
of their
のと、
athletes.
あと
And
階級
they
をしっかり
really
分けてやってくれるっていう、
uh,
あと階級の小さい選手も多
put
かったってい
strength
う
on sparring with the
感
same
じです。
weight
で、
divisions.
期間は1ヶ月半ぐらい
So
です
they
ね。
don't cross train against with too big of a weight difference. And lastly, they had a lot of fighters at my weight class, so I think it just made the most sense to go there. And I was over there for about a month and a half.
Okay. Yeah, definitely not a bad place whatsoever. And, Dominic, one of my favorites as well. Will unshamefully admit that, and an inspiration in many ways, more than just fighting, I would say. And Eric Del Fiero, an awesome guy as well. I've spoken with him. I'm sure you're excited for Dominic fighting next week, right?
そうですね。嬉しいですね。楽しみですね。うん。
Yeah, I'm very excited. I'm very happy for him, and I'm very excited to see him fight again.
Always a treat getting to see him do what he does best. But as for you, of course, Shuto Watanabe is going to be your debut opponent here in Ryzen. Just overall, do you think this is like a pretty good matchup for what you would like for, this stage and getting your first Ryzen fight, Shuto?
そうですね。
Yeah, so Watanabe, he's a
どう
he's a fighter.
そう
He likes to take the back. He's a ground fighter.
まあ
But
バック
stylistically,
バックが
I think
強
it's a
くて
very good matchup for me. He doesn't like to
そうですね。まあ
strike. His
テクニ
striking
ッ
is
ク
not
的
so
にも本
good.
当に
He always want to take it to the ground, but I'm comfortable on the ground
僕
as
と
well.
相性がいい
So I
です よ
think
ね。
he's an
打撃がそん
opponent
なに
where I
でき
can
なく
probably
て、
beat him
で
wherever I
グラッ
want.
プリングに
I can strike
持
with
ち込
him,
まれても
and then even if he
全然
takes me
別に
down,
多分戦
I
え
am
るの
pretty
で、グラッ
confident
プ
that
リ
I
ン
can
グで
hold
も。
my own against him,
だからそ
and
の
it'll be a fun fight. I
僕とし
think
てもすごい相性
I'll
の
be
いい
able to
相手で、
show a good
そ
fight
の殴りに
with
行っ
him.
て、もしテイクダウンさ
So
れたとし
I'm
て
very
も、
excited for that.
その全然
As
寝
for
技で
him
なん
being my
なんとでもなる
debut,
というか、
Ryzen debut
寝技す
opponent,
ればいい
I'm
っ
not
ていうの
quite
もあるし、
sure what
で
I
どっ
have to
ちで
say
行っても
about
多分
that,
勝てる
but
ので、
I know that this is my
相
first
性がいいんだ、いい
fight
相
in
手だな
Ryzen,
と
and
思
I
って
know
ま
I
す。
have to impress
で、
people. I have to
ふさ
show
わ
a
し
good
いかど
showing.
うかはちょっ
So obviously the results, winning and
と、
losing, that's definitely
なんともわ
important,
かんないんで
but
すけど、
I want to show
まあ、本当に
people how I fight.
デビュー戦なん
And I
で、
think
今
it's
回は
one of my
勝つ負け
obligations to
る
be able to
も
perform in a
まあ
way
も
to
ちろん
wow
大
people.
事だとは思うんですけど、
So that's what I'm going to be
そ
looking for.
れより先の
Yeah, and not to look past Shuto, of course, but Ryzen has recently announced that, the Bantamweight Grand Prix is in the works, the tournament 16 man. Is that something you're kind of aiming for now? Get a fantastic performance here, get the win, and then maybe try and be a part of that?
そうですね。そこに呼んでもらえ
Yeah, I
る
mean,
と、なんかいろい
not
ろ
not to
聞いてみたいかなと思って、
look past my opponent,
まあ
but
全員強いん
I
ですけ
think
ど、
getting the call
こ
for
の
the
強い
60 man
選手とやり
Grand
たいん
Prix
で、
would be ideal. It would
本
be
当
the
に
quickest way for me
こう多分
to
1回戦目とか
make
か
a
な、
name and build
いい
myself
選
up
手
in this promotion.
と
And
いいね、
I'm
いい
not
戦
here
い
for
ができ
easy
るかなと思っ
fights.
て
I
ます。
want to take on the best. I'm here for tough fights. And I think Ryzen does definitely have that roster where everybody's tough. So, hopefully I get the toughest opponent from the opening round.
Yeah, wouldn't be able to go wrong with sneaking in there and then winning it all would definitely be the best way to make a fantastic impression, that's for sure. But speaking of weight classes and that kind of thing, your last fight was actually up at featherweight, and just kind of curious what the reason for that was. I assume maybe something to do with the training situation right now, and you preferred not to cut weight for that one, or what's the story behind the last fight?
あ、あれはシュートが、
So that fight was actually
重
done
量方法
because
を
it was
コ
done
ロナ
by
対策
Shudo
で
for
水
the
抜きなし
corona
で全員当日計量
anti-corona
で水を抜くなよって
situation.
いう免疫力が下がるから水を抜くな
They
よっていう
said
の
that
で
when you cut water weight,
当
when you
日
cut
計
a lot
量
of
の
water weight, it'll
65.1 だっ
affect
たん
with
で
your
すよね。
immune system. It weakens your immune system. So Shido banned all weight cuts,
ワン
which
と
means
同
that
じ計量方
they did
法
the
です
same day weigh-in at 65.8 kilos, which is featherweight division. So that's why so it's pretty much the same way one does their weight cuts. Or so that's the reason why I weighed in 65.8. They didn't allow me to cut water weight.
Gotcha. All right, makes sense there. Just wasn't sure if that was like a test for if you wanted to, feel out the waters at 145 or whatever, but that makes plenty of sense now. And speaking of Shuto, of course, the promotion that you've spent, practically your entire career in, a very good promotion in their own right. Is how important do you think it has been to get the experience under your belt, in their promotion before getting on this big Ryzen platform?
そうですね。まあ、その、
So I've always thought that if
日
you
本で多
if you
分
trained in an MMA gym in Japan
総合格闘技
and
を
if you follow the
ちゃんと
proper
ジムに入って
footsteps
や
of
る
being an
と、
amateur
そ
and
の
continue to
アマ
perform
チュアで
well
も
in
受けなかった
amateurs, and if
り、
you
新
just
人王トーナメントとか
kind
で
of
受けないと、
follow a
普
career
通
in
のシュート
MMA
に
in
なると思う
Japan,
ん
like
ですよ
you'll
ね。
end
だ
up
か
in
ら最
Shudo.
初は全
That's
然
what I've always
意味
thought.
は僕の中ではな
I've
くて、
thought that
ま
Shudo
あ
always
強い団体
produces the
で
best talent
国
and has
内
the
だったら
best
シュートが一番
competition. I
強いだ
still
ろうと
believe that,
し、まあ
but
今でも思ってるんで
yeah,
す
it's just it was
よ。
normal for me
来場の
to
時
end
は
up in Shudo.
シュート
But
で やる
as I continue my
ってい
fights
う風に自
in
然となったん
Shudo,
ですけ
building
ど、
my
まあ
record in
やっ
Shudo,
ていくうちにやっ
my
ぱりその
career, it
出
just
ていくう
feels
ちに
like home, and it
こうなん
it
ていう
makes
か
you feel like you
なんだろう
start
まあ愛
liking to
着
promotion,
じ
you
ゃないで
start
すけど、
liking to production,
団体がやっぱ好きになってい
and
くので、
you know,
まあそ
at the end,
の
you feel like you want to represent
後
them,
半の方
and I
は
still do.
このシュート
So
で
I
盛り上げ
think
たいみたいなの
performing
は
well in
もちろんありま
Ryzen,
したね。まあそれは今で
and
も
I
ま
hope I can give
ああるん
back
で、
to Shudo,
こ
perhaps by
う
going
ね、シ
back
ュー
and fighting
ト
there
で
again,
も
or
また試合
you know,
し
just
て、
just give back
す
to
ごい
to what brought me
ね、
up,
シュートのお客さん
and
を喜ばせ
you
たい
know,
っていうのはあります。
that's how I will always feel.
Absolutely. They do an amazing job of, cultivating the Japanese talent that you guys have over there, yourself included. But when it comes to maybe, if you could highlight something in your career to this point, a biggest learning experience, is there something, that you would highlight as the biggest learning experience you've had in your career so far?
どうだろう。試合でですか？
I think a
まあで
loss against
も、
Riley Dutro, that was my biggest learning experience. Yeah, the reason is
ペドロに負けた
that was
時
definitely
で
my
すか
first
ね。
loss, but
はい。
it was a brutal reality
あ
check.
の
You know,
まあ
I
差が
was
見事にへし折られたという
at,
か、
at
あ
up until that point in my
の
career, you know, I was just doing
なん
everything
だろ
off
う、あ、
my
全然
instinct,
日本人
and
と
I
外人
was
全
able
然
to
違
beat
うなっ
Japanese
てい
fighters
う
left and right
の
without a
を思い
problem.
知らされたし、
But it was my first international
こ
opponent.
う、そ
It
こ
was
ま
a
で
brutal
長い
reality
日だ
check,
っ
and
た
it
の
kind of
で、
made me rethink
あ、俺負けるんだみ
and
たいなと
revisit
ころ
my
とか、
training methods
まあそのもっ
and
とちゃ
trying
んと真
to
摯に
revisit
技
my
術
training
とか、
environment And I felt that in order to to beat international competition, you got to go out and train with them. So that's definitely one of my turning points.
Yeah, well, kind of always good to, have one of those kind of things happen to you earlier in your career, especially rather than later on, right? So, all right, well, we'll wrap up here with one last thing, Takumi. This has been great, getting to chat with you, man. Outside of MMA stuff, though, let's get away from MMA, when you're not training or doing anything of the sort related to punching people. What are some things you like to do, man? Any, specific activities, hobbies you might have? What does downtime look like for you?
趣味は、でも
I used to play a lot of video games. I still do, but most recently I started owning some reptiles, and I'm into the breeding of reptiles now. So that's been consuming a lot of my free time, and I'm very into it right now.
All right, very cool. That is a fun hobby. I have a friend who's also very into the lizards and snakes and stuff like that. You have some of those those animals, I'm assuming.
そうですね。トカゲとかヘビとかです。はい。
Yeah, it's like lizards and snakes.
Very cool, man. Well, keep having fun with that. The fight's coming up, of course, but we will leave it there, Takumi. Thanks so much, for taking the time, sir. Big arigato gozaimashita to you. It's been really fun. Really looking forward to you getting in the RIZIN ring. Gonna be awesome, and we'll see where it goes from there. But I wish you all the best, and hope training goes smoothly up until that point, sir. So thank you so much again.
はい、ありがとうございます。
And it is GOAT time, Ayaka Hamasaki. All right. Well, hello, Ayaka. Good to see you again. Happy New Year. Congratulations on becoming champion. Hope you've been well. This is really cool. Thank you so much for coming back. You are the first reappearing guest on Broadened Horizon, so thank you so much. Just how are you doing?
Yeah, thank you very much for bringing me back. I feel great. My fight is about a month away. Everything is on point, and I feel fantastic.
Awesome to hear. And I know that recently you got to do some outdoor activities with Kyoji Horiguchi-san for the RIZIN Outdoors. What was that like? Was that fun to do? Do you, like to do some outdoor camping things and activities like that when you're free? How was that experience?
Yeah, the last time I've been out camping was when I was in elementary school with my family. So it's been a long time, and it was a really fun thing to do.
Wow, that is definitely a long time for the break in camping, and then getting to go with somebody like Kyoji, who is a master fisherman. I bet that was cool to see him do his thing, right?
Yeah, I've actually never thought that fishing would need such technique. I thought it didn't really matter, but the fact is that I didn't catch any, and Horiguchi was catching fish like crazy. So, I really felt that he was a professional at that too.
Yeah, if anybody in MMA he's definitely one of the more well-known fishermen, and it's definitely a game of practice and patience, that is for sure. So you'll get him next time. Just takes a couple. Practice makes perfect, like I said. But since you were last on the show, Ayaka, I also spoke to Tomoe Sawa-san, a former opponent of yours, and we talked about maybe how she could challenge you in a karaoke battle. Did this ever happen? Did she offer any requests to do a sing-along with you?
Yeah, so that has never happened. And as for karaoke, I would never expose myself to anybody in karaoke, so I don't think that would ever happen.
All right, we'll keep the activities in the cage at MMA exclusively then, unless there's some more fishing and things alike. But just had to ask about that. Of course, some fun non physical activities to do. But speaking of MMA and whatnot, of course, had that fantastic win to reclaim your title on New Year's Eve against Miyu. Just how good of a performance? How happy were you with that? Because hard not to be, I imagine. And where would you rank that among your best wins? Because that was incredible stuff there.
山本美優選手は
Being able to face Miyu Yamamoto was definitely
国籍は日本じゃない
it
で
was
す
a
けど
humbling experience.
日本人の中で
I mean,
は
obviously she's a
本当
Canadian
に
nationality
日
right
本
now,
という
but
私の次に
you know,
強い
I've
と思ってた
always
ので
thought that she was
本
definitely
当に
the
相性も
top
悪いしどっちが勝
contender
つ
in
の
my
か
weight
分からないっ
class.
ていう状況で
Probably, you know, one of the
試合がで
best
きた
ones
のは
out
本
there.
当に
So it was an
私
honor
の中
for
では
me
す
to
ごく良
participate
かったか
against
なって
such
いうの
a
と、
fighter,
点
and
数つけるなら
I was very happy to be able to get that win
全
over
然
such a
高くない
strong
ですけ
opponent.
ど本当に50
If
点
I
とか
were to
やっ
rate
ぱり
my
こ
performance that night, I
う、
wouldn't give
テイ
it
クダウン取られた
such
の
an
もそうです
high
し、
high
パンチも何
score.
回かもらったんで、
I did give up a
ま
takedown.
あ、パーフェクトとは程遠い点数かなと
She
は
did
思い
land
ま
a
す。
couple shots on me. So I would give it a 50 out of 100. As for my
All right, wow. That's you're being very hard on yourself, I would say, but of course you're the athlete. I am not, so understandable there. But I mean, just the way you pulled it off to a a teepee style choke with the legs over the neck, was that also even crazier to pull that off because you were talking with Yuki Matoya ahead of the fight, as we saw in the confessions and the build up to it about how he recently, a year or so ago, hit one of those in his own right, and then you go and do it, and you're talking about the great submission game he has ahead of your fight. Was that kind of crazy to be like, oh wow, look at how this turned out?
あ、あれはライジンコンフェッションでは
that
そういうふう
technique,
に
that choke itself,
作られてるというか、
it's a pretty
描
common
かれてるん
technique
で
in
すけど、
judo.
全
And
然
I've been
違う
using
選
that for
択ばかり
quite
で、
some time
あれ
now.
はもう
And
柔道部時代からちょっ
Mr.
と違う
Abe,
ん
my
ですけど、
coach
柔道
from
の技とは。
AACC, he's the one who
からよ
taught it
く
to
やっ
me a
てた
while
技
back.
で、ACC で
So
安倍さんが
those
教
were
わ
one
っ
of
た
the
技で、
moves that
普
just
段からよく
kind
やっ
of
てる技なんで、普通に
naturally
試合でも
came
何も
out.
考えずに
It
やるよう
wasn't,
な感じです。
those Rising Confessions definitely admit it looked like, that the talk, I learned it from there. But no, that move itself is a very common move, practice move from judo. It just came out naturally.
Well, still very impressive nonetheless. And yeah, you could see kind of the connection there with the videos and all that. So that made it very cool. Already on top of already being very cool, that was a submission that we very rarely do see in MMA. So a very big deal, I would say. And just as for defeating somebody like me, who I know you have a lot of respect for, and speaking of Rising Confessions, we saw you guys have your moment behind the scenes and all that. And then I know you guys hung out a little bit for a video on Miyu's channel later on. So it just got me like kind of realizing a little bit the Japanese MMA scene in particular is very tight knit, I would say, from what I've seen, and especially with the women's side of things. Do you feel that it's kind of been like hard to make enemies throughout your career? Because I mean, we never hear too much about really like nasty rivalries, especially on the women's side.
やっぱ個人間では あったとしても、
It's really hard to say because, a lot of people don't really express their true feelings, especially the women, So, but with all that being said, me personally, I'd fight anybody. So I don't like it when people think that we're all buddies and friends. Because I would fight, I mean, obviously there are some of my previous opponents that are friends, but for me, I would fight anybody. And I don't like people thinking that, oh, I'm fighting my friend. They're fighting even though they hang out. I don't want people thinking of me that way. This is just my opinion. But, overall, I personally would fight anybody.
All right. Well, we will definitely circle back to that in a bit here, but Ayaka, it's really been incredible. I think watching your career just as time has gone on, and how you've looked recently. I think you could argue, you tell me your thoughts on this, but that you're looking better than you ever have in your career, despite getting older. Time just is what it is, right? But you would think that you're still 21 by how you're performing out there right now. Do you feel like you're only getting better despite having, just continually building up experience and grabbing more and more titles?
そうですかね。そう。まあ幸いその
I think
大き
there's
な
a
怪
few
我もな
reasons
く今は
that go
練
with
習
that.
続
But
けてこれてるの
one is
と、
that I haven't been
まあ以前は
I haven't
まあ打
sustained
撃があ
any
んまり
major
できなかったん
injuries lately.
で、
So
あんま
I've
り
been
こう思
constantly
い切
be
った
able
打
to
撃が出せな
train
かったのを今はボクシ
healthy.
ングをして少し自
And I
信が
think
ついて
that's
きた
one
ん
thing
で、
that
打撃も思いっきり出
that
せる
definitely takes effect.
ようにな
And
っ
the
た
other
ん
thing
で、
is that
逆にこう打撃か
I've
ら
been
出技
working a
を
lot on my striking lately. And before, I knew that my striking wasn't good. So I wasn't confident in my striking. So that definitely reflected into my fight style. But recently, I've been really working hard on my hands, my striking, and I've become a little bit more confident in myself and my striking. So I think that's showing in an overall performance where I can comfortably use my striking, which leads to utilizing my grappling more in a more effective way. So I think my technique is getting better with my hands, which is leading to my grappling being more efficient and leading to more finishes. So I think those are the reasons why I may be performing better.
Yeah, well said. We can definitely see the proof of that in your performances. So if anybody's going to assess that, you're the perfect person to do so. I couldn't agree more. And you got Kana coming up here in the rematch now for the title once again, but this time you're the champion going into this one. Just what are your thoughts on this rematch with Kana? Did you expect it to happen next?
もちろんです。何回か去年
So this fight actually had I think I got 2 offers last year, and I heard that she declined twice. So, with all that being said, I have definitely expected this fight to happen sometime down the line. And when you look at just the Japanese fighters within the weight class right now, she's probably the only one left. And, she's been winning her fights, so I do think that she was the next one in line. And, I was definitely expecting this fight to happen.
What have you made out of her, performances that she has had, all the wins that she's put together since, you guys fought the first time? Would you say there's been very visible improvements in her game?
全部がちょっとずつ伸びてはいるとは思うんですけど。
She's been getting better at every aspect, just a little bit. But from my eyes, I don't think there's anything significant that she's gotten better at.
Fair. And, this fight will be the main event of RIZIN 27, which is always a cool thing. But for you, somebody who's kind of been there, done that, seen it all at this point, is getting a main event spot really just kind of whatever to you, or do you take it as a special thing?
そうです。あまりこう、
I don't really feel anything special about being a main event. I don't feel obligated to do like new things, but I do feel that I want to put on a good fight. I want to put on a fight that the fans want to see. I want to put on a fight that that the fans will enjoy. So in that part, that part of the mindset may be affected a little bit, but overall, I don't really try to pressure myself too much.
Of course, if you don't have to add pressure, then why would you, right? So makes sense. And last time we caught up, Ayaka, the last 2 times I guess that we caught up, I asked you about if you are kind of envisioning life after MMA at this point. And I'm not saying that we want that, because like I said, you're looking fantastic right now, and like you could go on for another 10 more years, but you said, let's wait till I win the title back, and then maybe I'll have a different answer for you. That's what you said last time. So you've done that. Is anything more clear in terms of how much longer you might want to keep fighting for? Are you still just going with the flow and feeling like you could go on for forever now?
たまに考えるんですけど。
Right now, like, I kind of do think of, I have started to think about my life after my career, but I haven't really put my thoughts into it. Like, I just kind of think about it. But I do think that I still want to be involved in the sport somehow. But again, I do know that I'm not a great teacher. I am not great at teaching things to other people. So, I'm just still at that point where, I kind of want to be involved, but I know I'm not going to be a good teacher. I don't know what to do. But, it's very hard. I don't really think about it too much yet.
Right. And like I said, you don't have to, because you're still doing very well and able to hang with the best of them out there. And, just to circle back a little bit to how you said you would fight anybody, and, maybe we're not all friends necessarily. I don't want to push you in any directions, but I asked Rena about this as well in terms of if she would be open to fighting you at some point because we know you guys have kind of a close relationship. And she said maybe not. It would have to be a special occasion, like if you were in a tournament and had to fight, or a retirement fight or something like that. So I'm just curious, what would you do if the opportunity was there for you and Rena to fight possibly? Because that's that's a matchup we haven't seen before.
はい。全然私は。
I would have no problem taking the fight if that's something that people want to see.
見たければ、皆さんが。見たければ全然やりますね。
All right. I mean, is that kind of a situation you feel like with most matchups, I suppose, and especially ones that we haven't seen yet, because you have fought mostly everybody that you possibly can. So when a new matchup is presented to you, does that excite you a little bit more than maybe a rematch like Kana, for example, or the Jinyu Fry ones? Just does it make a difference at all?
もちろんやっぱり。
So my policy in taking fights is that I never turn down a fight. Whenever it's presented to me, I always take. And but if you would ask me, if I would prefer to fight, new fighters, yes, the answer would be yes. It's a lot more interesting. I get more hyped and I get more excited to be able to face a new opponent. But right now, with the whole pandemic situation, it's very hard to bring in international fighters, and there's no point of picking opponents at this moment. So, overall, to answer your question, I would never pick an opponent. Like, if any, I would take any offer that is presented to me.
Absolutely. Very well put there. And yeah, a little bit more tough during these times, unfortunately, but hopefully they will be over sooner rather than later. I appreciate you taking the time, Ayaka, and, as the very first time, the first reoccurring guest on Broaden Horizon, I did want to do a little bit something special for you here as we get ready to wrap up. You are the Atomweight GOAT as far as I'm concerned, and since I couldn't send you a trophy or anything of the sort, I had a portrait made for you in honor of your stellar 2020. Ayaka Hamasaki, congratulations. You are the first Broadened Horizon female fighter of 2020, as well as the winner of Submission of the Year 2020, and that is across every organization in the world of MMA. Congrats, champ. You have earned it. Arigatou gozaimashita for taking the time to catch up once again, and I wish you all the best going forward.
わあ、嬉しいです。ありがとうございます。かっこいい。
Yeah, she said it's super cool.
Of course, I will send that to you. You have earned it. And yeah, just thank you so much. Wanted to do a little bit something for you. Nobody else is getting awards, but I figured for you, this was perfect to do. So.
いや、全然。本当に嬉しいです。ありがとうございました。
Thank you very much. I'm very excited for this. Thank you.
Next up, we have Kazuki Tokudome. Well, thanks so much for joining me, Kazuki. Awesome to get to talk to you. Hope you're doing well, and happy late New Year to you, man. So, just how's been 2021 starting out for you? I can't imagine it's been too bad, right? Got a fancy RIZIN contract now.
I think 2021 has kicked off to be a great start. I have a fight confirmed. I haven't fought since over a year, so and I'll be fighting in the biggest promotion in Japan. So it's a very good start for me.
Yeah, and you mentioned it right there, having not fought in a year. I'm sure that hasn't been ideal, but what have you been doing in the meantime to keep yourself busy?
So I was at the time I was still under the one contract. So I was training on a regular basis. I was training every day in case I got the call, so I can take any fight at any moment. I do believe that since I've been training daily, I feel that I've gotten much better. So I'm very excited to see what I can do in my upcoming fight.
I imagine that you probably wanted to fight last year, right? Or did things just not line up? Was that the main reason that you couldn't get in action last year?
Yeah, so obviously I'm sure it was because of the pandemic, right? I'm sure everybody in every kind of industry struggled with this, and it created lots of inconveniences for many people across the globe. So their main thing was in Singapore, so the travel restrictions definitely affected my plans.
Yeah, it has definitely affected everybody, like you said. And a lot of the people I've talked to, have said that they had to change up maybe their training during the meantime with the pandemic kicking off and all that. So did it force you to change things, especially in the early going when things took off? And, have they affected an overall change to how you've been preparing now?
練習スタイル
So my training environment fortunately didn't change too much because with the
試合し
pandemic.
たりもしてないんで、怪我
But
があんまりなかったりとか、
I wasn't
練習
fighting
をなんか
for
長
such a
く休
long
むっていう
time,
の
I
が
was
なかった
able
の
to
で、
remain
怪我せず
healthy
1年ず
and
っ
get
と
proper
同じメンバー
quality training throughout the
で
entire
ずっ
year.
と練習できてたんで、
So for me, I guess, trying
すごい
to
多分
take it in a
フィ
positive
ジカルだっ
way,
たり、
I was able to
細
get
かい部
quality
分もす
training
ご
with
い
a healthy
上
body
達して強くなったと思い
and
ます。はい
I didn't get any injuries which would take me out of practice at all. So, I think I was able to get physically stronger, get more technique. My level of competition in the game has gotten up significantly.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're feeling really good for this moment coming up here in a big one with the Ryzen debut. Just what was your reaction to getting that call to fight in Ryzen? And I mean, has this always been, maybe something you've been interested in doing, fighting for Ryzen since they've been around?
まあ本当に
So I was at a point where I couldn't fight and I couldn't make any money. So I had to do something to make money. I was struggling financially, and I was starting to look for fights in Japan. And at the same time, I got the offer from the biggest promotion in Japan for the co-main event against a great fighter like Satoshi. So like me, I'm very blessed. I feel blessed, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity.
Yeah, and we're looking very much forward to that fight. But before you got here, Kazuki, you've been all over the place in your career in terms of the places you've fought. KSW, UFC, Pancrase. One, as you mentioned, the last place you fought. Do you kind of view it as an accomplishment to say that you've been able to fight in all these major organizations throughout your career, and now adding Ryzen to that list?
まあそうですね。まあ
So I do believe that getting offers from a promotion
まあ自分
is
が何も
is
証拠だし、
definitely an accomplishment.
まあ周り
It's
の応援してくれ
they're
てる人
calling you
も
for a reason, and
まあ
they
いろい
believe
ろ
that
ちゃん
you
とやって
deserve
き
to
たよっ
be
て
in
いうの
their
を示せる
platform.
んで、まあ
So
すごいありがたいです。
me to be able to be fighting on many platforms, I think it's definitely an accomplishment. And getting a call from Ryzen, I think would make the people who supported me for a long time, the people around me, it pleases them as well. So I think it's a very good thing.
Absolutely. And as for like the feeling of fighting and making your debut specifically, when you look back at all these places that you have fought and remembering your debuts in them, did they feel like, oh wow, okay, I'm on a big stage now, jumping from place to place? Or was it kind of, did you treat it all the same? And as you get ready for another one here, does it excite you and you feel the moment of it as it approaches, or is it just you treat it all the same?
あんまりあんま関係ないかもしれないです。
Yeah, for me, a fight's a
もう試合
fight.
に集中してるん
And
で、
when
そん
I
な
go
に
in to get
あんま
into
り
that
ど
venue,
こでや
I'm
ってもあ
more
んまり変わんない。
focused on the fight itself. So for me, it doesn't matter where I fight. I'm going in there to do one thing, and that's the only thing that matters. So it really doesn't affect me. I take every fight the same.
Yeah, and you're taking on Satoshi, as you mentioned here in your Ryzen debut. Very, very good first opponent to be fighting in your first Ryzen fight. A guy who, was right in line to fight, the tournament champ, do you feel like this is a really big spot in terms of launching yourself forward after this and kind of stealing his spot to maybe get that fight with Tofik afterwards?
まあそこまではそんな
I
考えてない
think
ですけど、
things
まあ勝てば
won't
そういうふうに
go
なるんだ
as
なって
planned
いうの
in
を、
terms of getting a title fight. I don't think life
ま
is
あでも
too
いきなり
that
参戦
easy.
で
Just to
サ
be
トシに勝っ
going
たか
in
ら
there
そ
fighting
う
Satoshi,
トン拍子に
I
行くとは
don't
思っ
think
てないんで
that's
すけ
going
ど、
to get me an immediate title fight.
まあとりあえずこの
But
今のサトシとの
on
試合
track
を
right
すご
now,
い
I'm
集
just
中して
focused
考
on
えてるんで、後のことは別にあ
how
ん
to
まり
fight and
今
over
考
and
えてないで
defeat
す。
my tough upcoming opponent. So I'll just, I'm focused on this fight. I'm not really thinking past this fight. So whatever happens after this fight, if I win, we'll just see where it takes me.
Yeah, definitely. And not to suggest to look past Satoshi, of course, a very tough opponent, as you said yourself. And just as for the matchup with him, like, what do you make of it? Is it one that you like a lot? And just where would you rank Satoshi among like all the great opponents you've fought already in your career?
まあ、
I don't really like to rank people. It just I don't think I'm entitled to do that with other fighters. So I'll just put it in a way where I've fought Johnny Case too, and I've lost Johnny Case. Satoshi's fought Johnny Case. I've lost Johnny Case. So I'm just thinking that Satoshi will be a little bit under Johnny Case in terms of matchups and where he is. But I do have to admit that he's probably got the best ground game of any opponent I've ever faced. So, that's definitely going to be something that I have to consider and put in mind. So I know that Satoshi, after the loss against Johnny Case, I know that Satoshi's been working hard and he's gotten much better than the Satoshi who fought Johnny Case. So I'm taking all that under consideration, and that's the Satoshi I'm preparing for.
Definitely. And, just mentioning his incredible ground game that he does have, like, is that kind of something that excites you, the challenge of an opponent who is so good in one area? And, you for yourself having your judo background, do you look at it a little bit as your judo versus his BJJ and just the challenge that he presents in that area?
まあでも、世界チャンピオンになったんで、
I mean, obviously, he's become the world champion in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And I must say that, the ground game in MMA is much different than just strict Jiu-Jitsu. And I believe that I've been training a lot of MMA ground game, and I'm pretty confident in what I've been doing. So in terms of how I'm going to take on this challenge, I won't know until I actually face him in the ring, kind of feel him out, until I get if I interact with him in the ring and feel immediate threat, all I have to do is just not engage in his game. So I'm very excited to see what I can do against him, but I really won't find out until I actually feel him out in the ring.
And not to look ahead again, as we mentioned Tofik already, but a fellow former opponent of yours, a former rival, you could say, I guess, Taksuke Kume is also in RIZIN now, and you guys have fought multiple times in paper. When you think about past opponents and ones you fought multiple times, like Kume, do you kind of hope for like a trilogy fight at some point when you have that option now that you're both in the same promotion once again? Do you kind of think about that stuff, or is it just we'll see what happens when the opportunity presents itself?
まあ、組まれたらしょうがないですけど、
I would prefer not to fight the same opponent 3 times. But if it's booked and if it's offered to me, I'll take it. But for me, I would prefer to be fighting new guys. During the press conference, I sat next to Kume, and we had a group chat, and we were like, yeah, we should probably not try to fight for the 3rd time.
Both is kind of over it at this point, right? Two was enough, is what you're saying.
そうですね。
I think a rematch against anybody is fine for me, but we've already went at it twice. So maybe a 3rd time is just a little too much, I think. And I think that's what we both think.
Fair enough. Totally fair there. That is a lot of time to fight each other. So and you have all these new options now in the RIZIN lightweight division. So yeah, you don't need to run anything back, right? So makes sense there. But as for the career that you've had, Kazuki, so long and so many fights that you have had and all the places you've been, as we mentioned already, in terms of goals that you might have left, like, do you have anything set in mind, or are you kind of like just going with the flow and just going to take it fight by fight, or do you have something in mind that you really want to get to at this point in your career?
そうですね。まあ、30歳まで
So one of my goals, my goal as a fighter was to make it to the UFC before 30. And I made that happen. So at this point, right now, I'm just going to try to keep on going until I can. Yeah,
that's definitely a good goal. Always just kind of, to do what you can, take it fight by fight, as I mentioned. But just to leave things off here, Kazuki, this has been great. Thank you so much. I want to take you through the time machine a little bit now. If you were able to go back to when you very first started in MMA professionally, with all the knowledge you have now, I'm just curious, like, what advice would you give your past self? With all the knowledge you've gained, I'm sure that is a tough question, but I'm curious to know what advice you would give your past self.
ガードを上げろですかね。My advice would be keep your guard up.
Not bad at all. Not bad at all. Can't go wrong there. Defense is the best offense, right? So, all right, we will leave it there. Kazuki, this has been great, man. I'm very much looking forward to your debut. Wishing you all the best. Cannot wait for the fight, for the event. Thank you so much for doing this. Big arigato gozaimashita for taking the time as you're at the gym there. Appreciate it greatly. And just wishing you a great rest of your day and training up until the fight. So thank you so much, sir. And last but not least, it is Yoshinori Horie. Oh, thanks so much for joining me today, Yoshinori. Great to get to talk to you, man. Hope you're doing well. Just how has the beginning of the year been starting out for you? 2021, fresh start, kind of. Got a fancy RIZIN contract. Just how's the start of the year been for you?
そうですね。いつもと The beginning of 2021, most of it's the same environment and everything. But I've got a fancy event ahead of me, fighting in RIZIN. That's definitely something that's different than usual. So I'm definitely more excited than usual.
Yeah, I mean, just how exciting is it? The biggest promotion in Japan is RIZIN. Of course, many compare it to the late great Pride. Just what was your reaction to, getting the call to have this opportunity?
そうですね。やっぱり何度もちょっと同じような感じにはなってしまうんですけど。it might sound all the same, but I was very excited to get the contract, get the offer, and just fighting on such a big stage with a lot of exposure. It's just something different, and being able to showcase my skills in front of a much bigger audience with more exposure, it's nothing but motivating.
And just has it been, since it came to be RIZIN in 2015, was this a kind of something that you had in mind of where you wanted to be maybe at some point and getting your chance to have this moment that is finally arriving now?
そうですね。特に今もRIZIN Yeah, of course. RIZIN's level of competition in my weight class has definitely, gotten up, and I think it's definitely worth putting my time and effort into making it to the top in this promotion. So I think it's I've been wanting to compete here.
Yeah, and you've spent most of your career in a very, prestigious organization like Pancrase. So I'm just curious, what has it been like, the experience that you've had so far being a part of, Pancrase and gathering up experience in that promotion?
そうですね。アマチュアからYeah, so I was, I spent my times in Pancrase up until the part where I went to UFC. But Pancrase had a very healthy and competitive division, and that motivated me to get better and stronger. So I think that environment that Pancrase had, that helped me get to where I'm at right now. 頑張らなくちゃいけないっていうふうに思えて強くなれたとは思います。
For sure, hard to argue with that. Pancrase, very, plenty of talented fighters come out of there as well, yourself included, of course. You mentioned, the UFC right there, and I just have to ask. It was, I think, surprising for most people to see, when they released you, especially considering just one fight and how young you still are. Like, how surprising was that for you at the time?
もう一番は Yeah, when I heard about that, it was I was nothing but shocked. It was that moment when I heard about the release. It was really bad.
Did they give you any reason why, or was it just, sorry, you're on your way now?
So I guess in the letter they sent me, it said that the featherweight division was. There were too many fighters in the division, and I guess that's what was written on the letter. Which that's what I was told.
And I imagine that that's probably, has it given you like a feeling of maybe having more to prove now because of just that situation having had gone through?
ああ、それは、そうですね。特に、
So I think, yeah,
この雷神という舞台とか
the
で
emotions
戦える
definitely
というの
help
は、
me out in terms of
やっぱり
motivation.
そうです
You
ね。
know, like
例えば USC とかって、
in
あんまり日
Japan,
本じゃ知られてな
not
いんですけど、
not too many people
雷神
know
だった
about
ら
the
もう誰
UFC.
もが知っているような
And
大会ですので、
but
見てろよっていう
RIZIN,
思いで、
almost everybody knows about
思いは
RIZIN in
すごくありま
Japan.
すね。はい。
So I think in that way is, me fighting in Japan, stepping in the ring, in the RIZIN ring, I do want to take that feeling, that emotion towards the UFC and just turn it into something positive.
Definitely. And we're very excited to see what you turn into with your performance, taking on Tetsuya Seki here in your Ryzen debut. And just what do you know about him as an opponent? And like, what do you think of this matchup, especially for your debut?
そうですね。身長が高くて、
Yeah, so my thoughts on Seki, I mean, he's a tough, I'm sorry, he's a tall fighter, he's tall, very tough and durable, and he's got a strong
な
heart.
ると思いますね。
And he's also a striker, which means that this has potential of being a very, very fun fight. And I like the matchup.
Are you kind of one of those guys who maybe prefers a challenge in the sense of, all right, I know that this fight's probably going to be a real competitive and crazy one, as opposed to one where you're like, all right, I know that I'm going to walk through this guy. Of course, you have to have that confidence in both situations, but do you ever kind of get more excited for one over the other?
そうですね。その、小学校の時から空手
So
を
I've been competing in karate since,
やってきてたんです
a
け
little
ど、
kid.
どちらかという
So
と自分より
from that point, I've
その
always
学年
performed
が上だったり
better
とか強い
when I go
な
against
と思う選手と戦う時とかが
opponents who
気
are
が引き締ま
are
って
older,
強く
better
なるってい
than
う
me.
のはその
And
時からこう
I
感
do
じてい
feel
て、
that that kind
で
of
今も
has
その
relayed
格闘
over
技
to my
を
transition into
始め
MMA.
て
I do feel
そういっ
that
た
I
ところは
perform
実際
better,
に
and it makes
あっ
me,
て
it overall
強い
makes me
相
a
手が
better
強ければ
fighter
強いほ
when
ど
I
自分
go
も強
against
くなれるっていうの
challenges.
は
So I
あると思い
definitely
ますね。
think that having challenges in a fight, it makes me better as a fighter.
Of course, got to kind of push yourself in that way and maybe level up within the fight itself, aside from just getting the victory. You mentioned the karate background there, which I'm sure you've had some experience in that part of fighting with tournaments and what have you. And with Ryzen this year, maybe looking to put together a featherweight Grand Prix, do their own tournament. Is that something that gets you excited to the possibility of competing in a big, Grand Prix style MMA tournament?
そうですね。やっぱりその
Yeah, so
先に
tournaments
上
are
面を
it,
取れる
it's
可
it's
能
very
性がある
exciting because
っていうのに対して、
it has everything laid out for you to become
そうです
make
ね、
it to
ワク
the
ワクして
top
ますね。
in one
ワクワ
shot.
クしてますし、
So, it has potential
正直
where
まあ
you
空
can make
手
it
とか
all
だ
the
った
way
ら一
to the
日に何
top.
試合もできるっていうのはあるんですけど、
So tournaments are
ま
always
あ
exciting.
MMA で
But in
一
karate,
日に2試合、
fighting
3
fighting
試合
multiple
になると
times
正
in
直
in a
きつい
day,
なとかっていう
it's
思いも
not
あるん
too
ですけど、
hard.
トーナメント自
But
体が
I honestly
そういっ
think that
た
I
チャン
honestly
スでは
do
あるの
think
で、
that fighting 2-3 fights in
はい
one
楽
day
し
in
みですね、すご
MMA,
く。
that's gonna be really brutal. But but still the chances and the opportunities are wide open for tournaments and Grand Prix. So I'm just very excited about the possibility.
Yeah, so many options in the new home of Ryzen that you have. So I can't imagine, it'd be hard not to be excited. So very excited for you as well and what the future could hold past, the debut fight. But to look back to the last fight, actually, against Nakajima, of course, unfortunately, split decision loss for you. But, when it's a fight like that, a close one where it can go either way and a split decision is the final result, like, what are your biggest takeaways from something when it's that close?
はそうですね、MMA、
Regardless of how the fight goes, how competitive the
結果が
fight
全ての
was,
世界なので、
results
2対1
is
で
what
負けた
matters
ところ
in our
で、
world.
こうネッ
And
トとかに載るのは
even if it
負
was
け
a
ってなっ
split
ちゃうの
decision
で、
loss,
めちゃ
on
めち
your
ゃ
record, it goes
悔
as
し
a
いで
loss.
すね。はい。
So, there's no way around it. It just sucks. And yeah, it's just what it is.
Would you say that it's harder to deal with a very close loss, like one that you could have arguably won on the scorecards, or one that's, decisive, like a finish? Is it both, equally terrible, or is it is worse in one way?
そうですね。前回の
so losing in a close fight, decision, split decision, it's it sucks. It's mortifying, right? It's hard to get over. But again, like getting beat to a pulp and say getting absolutely dominated, get knocked out, or getting choked out in a one-sided fight, that also it sucks and it's very mortifying. So as a result, I mean, to answer your question, losing itself, it's not fun and it's always mortifying.
Definitely not arguing that or anything, but I just ask because, a lot of fighters will have kind of the that battle of, or we ask a lot about what is harder to do as an MMA fighter or in dealing with like the mental side of things as opposed to the physical. Some people will say it's 50-50, it's totally even, or they outweigh one a lot more by the other. Like, just how do you look at it? Would you say that there's one, the mental side or the physical side is more difficult, or is it pretty balanced?
どちらかといえば自分は
Obviously it's both, right? But for me, if I were to say, it's definitely more mental for me, because it's very hard to maintain your motivation. Motivation and a set mindset is all you actually need to become a world champion. A strong mindset, and to keep that mentality, maintaining that mentality is the tough part, I do believe. And as long as you have a strong enough mindset, I think the body, the physical part can come, it will follow. So I think for me, the mentality part, the mental part is much more, it weighs heavier.
And with that in mind, like how much time outside of, fighting and doing training, whatever it may be, do you spend like, are you thinking about it like all the time, or is it kind of important to distance yourself and kind of take time away from, this thing that takes up a lot of your life, of course?
そうですね。体を
So I think my main focus when I'm not training is to relax my body, to get proper rest. And in terms of refreshing the mind, I do occasionally go out and drink a little. I do value my on and off switch. I think that the contrast is important for me.
Yeah, definitely. I would agree that it's important, for most people probably, and myself included, it's nice to get away from whatever you're really focused on every now and then. And you can't just go nonstop all the time. So I agree with you there. But all right, Yoshinori, I will leave you with, one last thing, man, and probably a difficult one, of course. But, if you never got into fighting at all, like, do you have an idea of what maybe you would be doing now instead? Or is that just out of the question, fighting was meant for you?
そうですね。それ考えたことあるんですけ
So
ど
this is something that I've kind of thought before, but
ちょっと
I
自分
can't
不可能
really
ことできない
imagine
と思うんで
that. It's like I'm not really good at many things.
普通に無
So
難にやっていってるのかな
and another thing is that I don't
思
want
いますね。
to do something
だけ
normal,
ど、そうですね。
something
やっぱ普
generic.
通なことが嫌なんで、何か
So
普通じゃないことを
I
こ
guess
う
my
見つ
answer
けてや
would
ってる
be
と思い
I'd
ます。
probably be doing something different than others if I hadn't been in a fighter.
Of course, yeah, that's always a very tough one for people to answer, because I know that, if you even have that in your mind, then why are you even fighting at all, right? You should be totally committed to it.
いやいやいやいや、なんか面白いですね。ありがとうございます。
That was an interesting question. Thank you.
Of course, man. Well, we can leave it there. Yoshinori, this was awesome. Great getting to talk to you. Very excited for the debut coming up. I wish you all of the best, and hope the training for the rest of the weeks to come goes well before then. And we'll be tuning in, sir. This big arigato gozaimashita for taking the time, and we'll be tuning in. Thank you again.
ありがとうございます。頑張ります。
All right, so community questions time, the first of 2021 on Broaden Horizon. Gonna get into it. Thank you to those who submitted. We just have two today, and one very interesting one, but they're both good questions. Appreciate it so much, you guys, for tuning in and then submitting the questions, of course. So we will start off with this one from Zane Bando, who has submitted in the past, and coworker over at Fansided. Appreciate it greatly, sir. Zane asks, what is your main goal in terms of podcast growth throughout 2021? So I thought about this a little bit in the time I've had to digest it, and I kind of have a not stereotypical, but kind of plain basic answer for you, which is just keep doing what I'm doing, sort of, because the video stuff and the podcast stuff has really never been my number one focus or kind of thing to work on. I'm mainly a writer, and I still consider myself that despite all of the video stuff I have started doing, as you see here. So I don't know how much more I will try to change this year. I'm sure we'll make gradual updates and progressions every now and then, but in terms of anything big, it's not really, I don't have a goal. I definitely don't have a goal. So just keep doing what I'm doing in that regard, Zane. So appreciate the curiosity about it. And I hope I'm doing well, everybody. I hope I'm doing well with this side of the media sphere. But all right, for the second question, which is quite a loaded one, and I have had time to think about it, so I'm going to spring it on to you as well, Shingo, from Jehu Media. I hope I'm saying that correctly, sir. He's the guy who did that fantastic Megumi Fuji highlight recently after being inspired by the piece I did. It meant a lot that he said that could help inspire him to do that. It was very well done. Shout out to him. Check it out if you haven't yet, you guys, on YouTube. Jehu Media, Jehu. He asks, who is the Japanese MMA GOAT? So that is quite a question to ask. And I think that we just touched on one right there. Megumi is, arguably right up there. She could be the one for me. Of course, slightly biased as I've worked closely with her now. But when this question was asked, she came to mind. Ayaka came to mind. Hyoji, of course, a lot of people will say Sakuraba, who does deserve a mention, and for the older generation of MMA. But in terms of who came directly to mind, those are the ones for me. I don't know, Shingo. What do you think when you think about the Japanese MMA GOAT?
Yeah, that's a tough one, man. I mean, how do you define the GOAT? Like his accomplishments, his abilities, the popularity, his contribution to the sport. It's very hard. I think in terms of like modern MMA accomplishments, I think it's Kyoji Horiguchi. His abilities and what he's accomplished and him simply as a fighter. But obviously back in the day, Sakuraba-san is helped raise the popularity. Everything Pride grew around Sakuraba-san. I mean, me as a kid, I would purchase tickets to go see Sakuraba fight, and he's definitely one of those guys that made MMA more enjoyable to the casuals. He would do crazy stuff that you would never see in a fight. He would fight to entertain people. So I think in that terms, he could be the GOAT. In terms of taking MMA to the next level, I think Romina Sato-san from Shuto. I think he definitely helped Japanese MMA be more popular and like more cool, because back in the day, Shuto was I'm so bad with numbers, but Shuto, I think Shuto was the first MMA promotion. Like Shuto made MMA, right? And it's not said too often, but I think Shuto was the first one to come up with the concept of mixed martial arts. Anyways, but up until then, it was the fighters were all they're mostly grapplers, and they would wear these pro wrestling inspired shorts, these tight shorts, So it didn't look cool. It was so hard for a casual fan to go to a Shudo fight or an MMA fight and say, wow, that's cool. I want to wear one of those. It was very hard.
Yeah.
You needed to be affiliated with the sport or a gym in order to enjoy what was going on. But Romina Sato came out. It was that era where Maki Sakurai-san, Uno-san, where they wanted to make it a cool thing. So back in the day, they did a lot of collaboration with street brands, street clothes, and they made it into a culture. So they jointed MMA with a street culture, and that just took off. That was the early VTJ, Valley 2 to Japan days. And Romina Sato was definitely the key person during that era. So I think, there's still tons of people in the industry who respect Rumina Sato. And I mean, Joe Silva, he was a huge fan of Rumina Sato. Joe Silva's dog's name is Rumina. You know that?
I did not.
So, I mean, so if you ask Joe Silva, I think he'd probably say Rumina Sato. But yeah, and obviously you gotta mention Kid Yamamoto-san.
Mm-hmm.
The late Yamamoto-san Masato. I mean, that's not MMA, but they had their ages and they raised Kid Yamamoto. Definitely brought more attention to the general public through television, and it's just. I mean, I think you're spot on. I don't know where I'm going with this, but I think all the names I have mentioned probably deserve definitely a nomination. Megumi Fujisan definitely for women's MMA, and Ayaka Hamasaki. I mean, I think technically Ayaka Hamasaki is the first MMA world champion, a Japanese MMA world champion.
Yeah. So
I don't think she doesn't get enough credit for that, nor the recognition for that. So I think that's a huge accomplishment,
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I think those would probably be the names that I would nominate.
Yeah. No, it's very, very difficult, no matter what kind of GOAT conversations you're having, to narrow it down to one person. And in a region like Japan with so much rich history, it is, maybe harder than most other countries. Of course, Brazil comes to mind, but I think we hit most of the big important names to hit on there. Surely forgot somebody, and we very much apologize. Let us know in the comments below, but hope that was a good enough answer for you, Jehu, because it is very hard to single it out, as we said, but all very, very talented fighters. But all right, we will wrap it there, you guys. Just 2 this week, and of course 4 more additional great guests that we had to kick off 2021. Hope you enjoyed this episode, and just look forward to the rest that we have coming in 2021. Gonna be a good year. Can feel it. Gotta get the stank off from 2020, right? So we will see you next time. Appreciate all the support that you've given us from those first 6 episodes in the last year to this one here and going forward. Thank you so much, guys, and we will see you next time.